And welcome back to another episode of the Geek Centurions, me boy Eli.
It's me, Joe.
And we're here to talk about something interesting that's happened recently. At the time of this recording, the new trailer for Netflix's other attempt at a live-action adaptation, Avatar: The Last Airbender. The second time we've tried this. Hopefully, may God be with us. This will work.
Yeah, this has been sort of a thing that's been talked about a while. I mean, we had a trailer a couple months back. This is sort of like, I think, the latest one.
Mm-hmm.
As the show will be premiering this year. I just forgot the date off the top of my head, but, it's
the 2nd of February. 22nd, sorry.
Yeah, so at the time of this recording, a bit about a week from now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's gonna be interesting, right? It's like you said, the second ever live action adaptation of the Last Airbender. The first one being most famously the Last Airbender movie by M. Night Shyamalan.
You said famous. I think the correct word was infamous.
Because
that movie. Well, I think I said it before. I understand some of the decisions he's made in that movie. Is considered to be like one of the worst adaptations to put in on screen, and like one of the worst films in general.
Yeah, it's a lot of people have sort of the overwhelming opinion of like it was a bad movie.
Really bad movie.
To be fair, I think I remember we went to watch this movie in the theaters when it first came out.
Yes, and young us didn't know shit about storytelling.
Yeah, and I think even we were kind of just like, well, that was a thing.
Yeah, that was a thing, and a thing we saw. But now, here's the second attempt. And now it's not a movie, it's going to be a series. There's a lot of stuff that is implied through the trailers, also in the new stuff that we got beforehand. So not only are we going to talk about that, we're going to talk about our initial thoughts on it. I think the initial thoughts should be first. Joey, what are your initial thoughts seeing the trailer?
Well, I mean, overall, I think they've sort of nailed the style of the Last Airbender visually. Like everything looks pretty much what you expect it to look. I mean, the bending itself and the action does seem pretty on par with how you see it in the animated show. I'm gonna do my best not to bring up the Last Airbender movie. But I mean, like,
it's kind of hard not to. Especially when you see the choreography.
It's so nice when the firebenders don't need like a source of fire to bend, which, that was always one of those interesting decisions of like, okay, I kind of get where you're coming from this M. Night, or like, well, everyone seems to have their sources of bending except for fire guys. I feel like, to balance it out, and it's like, well, that's what makes them so potent, right? That makes them more threatening because they are the ones that can like literally bend fire from their own bodies, right?
Aside from like the airbenders and like the earthbenders who can bend anything that is within radius, I guess would probably be the same. Because airbenders, they just need air. Air is everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a earthbenders, as long as there is a substance made of the earth, they can do it.
Yeah.
Waterbenders need water, but as the show progresses, we kind of learn that you kind of don't need to be near water, or you don't kind of like when the example of Toph, right? She found a way to bend metal, which was thought to be
impossible.
Yeah, which to which her discovery was like, no, like metal is just a different kind of earth.
Yeah,
if it's pure metal, then it's like, no, we can't do shit.
Yeah, there's certain properties in the metal or whatever that like he was able to see and just bend. But yeah, more to the point, like I said, visually it all like pretty much lines up faithfully with the original series, right? Like it all just looks and just feels right.
Yeah, everything about it, to the look of certain characters, to the vibe that characters like Iroh gives off. When I see Iroh, I'm like, oh yeah, this guy looks like Iroh. Even the two main leads of Zuko and Aang's actors kind of give me that vibe as well. For me, my impression was that like, man, this is looking really, really good. I really hope they don't fuck this up, because this could be easily fucked up. Like, we're adapting from 2D animation to live action. A lot of people feel like that's not really lenient, kind of like makes the idea of animation kind of pointless,
Right.
And I get that, and I 100% agree with that. For me is okay. What changes are we doing? Because there's clearly gonna be some changes, in the vein that the kind of changes that they did with the live action One Piece. Because I'm getting a lot of that. Now the question is how well are you gonna execute it? Because I thought, for me personally, I felt like the live action One Piece executed well, and we'll talk about that in a minute too. But no, generally I'm very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Optimistic?
Optimistic, casually optimistic, cautiously optimistic. That's what I was gonna say. I said casually. Um, but it looks pretty good. I'm with you on the bending because that was always the weird thing about the live action one, and I think it's probably the last time we'll talk about the live action one, aside from like questionable ways to adapt it. Uh, just whenever the famous Earthbender sequence.
Yeah, yeah, in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
When compare that to, say, the shot of Boomy doing some earthbending stuff here, and it's like, yeah, that's how that should look. That seems appropriate.
Yeah. So that's really what I'm looking forward to. Now, what I mean by some of my concerns, though, I know you've heard of this as well. One of the main concerns I've had from when this was first talked about being made, um, is that some of the creative leads who worked on the show, I don't know if it was the original, creators, Joaquin Dos Santos. Wait, that's his name. I'm probably thinking of the MMA fighter. But I know the last name was Dos Santos. Was like some of them left due to creative differences for the show because they were originally on the creative team, but they left because of creative reasons. That makes me wonder personally, like, okay, what happened, right?
Yeah, that was probably one of the big things from the production side of things that was coming out. When the show was announced and all this stuff, like we had some of the creatives behind the original Avatar: The Last Airbender working on this one, and then they decided to part ways.
Okay, so I got the names wrong. I was thinking about someone else, but it was created by Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko. I hope I pronounced those names correctly. But continue.
Yeah, but so basically, like it talks of creative differences, and I mean, it kind of led to some means of like, oh yeah, we're just gonna like, oh yeah, like edgy Avatar, all this sort of like classic sort of like Netflix sort of like adaptation sort of thing. Um, well, I feel like that is probably a point of concern, right?
Yeah.
Of like, what exactly was the creative differences here? Because I don't think they ever actually.
No, they almost never say what the creative differences is, right? It's not until like later on, like years later, that we find out what it was. And oftentimes it depends on how well that project has done well,
Right.
right? Because like it could be something as simple as no, these two shouldn't be this way. They should be this way. This is how the show is. Oh, but we're trying to do something different. That kind of thing, right? And I get that, but it's also one of those things that I'm concerned about because what is Netflix trying to do, right? Compared to what the original creators want, right? It's one of those things where, like, what did these guys want, and was it reasonable, right? Because there's sometimes where I'm like, because it's coming from an artist's perspective, like I don't want to be limited, but at the same time, there are times where I have to accept my limitations and maybe work around them to progress.
No, definitely, right? Like it's one of those things of like this is like the creators and stuff, like, all right, this is our baby, right? We made this, and they have questions of like, how exactly are you making this? Do we even approve of what you're doing with the source? All that stuff, right? And the thing is that I think to bring up the movie again, the creatives did not have really much of a say in the movie, right? if I recall correctly. They didn't have much of a creative control. It was all Shyamalan basically. So I feel like perhaps some of the creative differences is just from that, right? Of like, hey, we didn't like how we were sort of like cut off from like creative style things from the movie. We don't want to have that thing happen here again, that sort of thing, right? And maybe just from like that, and then maybe like there's just smaller creative differences. Like, no, it can't be like that, because you did mention some things, at least in far as the trailer, that seems to imply that they might be doing some more stuff with certain characters, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, as far as we know, this will cover the first book of the series, which is Aang reawakens, all the way up to like him learning, how to use water bending, all that stuff, right?
Going all the way to the northern pole, and that kind of stuff. Shao and Zuko's rivalry, which was epic back in when I watched it, and rewatched it recently. I was like, oh yeah, that's the reason I like this show, kind of stuff. And actually, funny enough, rewatching that show, I forgot how like it's a very serious like show, but it still felt very like childish. I don't want to say that word.
It was age appropriate.
Yes,
I'm guessing is probably what you're thinking, right?
Yes.
Like there were various serious moments that the audience could focus on, but at the same time there was enough, brevity and
Nuance.
yeah, and like fun stuff for like kids to like enjoy, right? The comedy of like say Sokka or like various other characters.
Yeah,
right?
but as we progress, it becomes more mature and stuff like that.
Yeah, like
'cause-
moments are given the amount of weight and the weight that they need.
Yes, it's so surprising that a show like this came out the time it did, and like being allowed the things they did, because like it's kind of crazy that they kind of had this show going, and like I was a kid. I don't remember most of the shit that I remember watching as a kid, or like how like some things like just didn't click until like I got older, right? This is that show for me right now, because I was like, fuck, that was kind of nuts how they just went ahead and did that. And then we have Korra, which like I feel gets hated on for a lot of reasons. I don't agree with the hate, but I really do appreciate how much more mature that story was, and how some of there are more mature elements in that. But no, to your point, there does seem to be some kind of changes, and the question is, okay, what are we trying to do with those changes?
Yeah, because something that I think people have been noticing is that
It's hard not to notice.
mainly it's more of the characters with Azula and Ozai, right, being shown more prominently. Which, to be fair, that was always a interesting thing, right? Of like the Fire Lord was never really seen in the first until like the third season. Like we didn't get to see his face. Well, I guess till what second season, like or was it third season?
It was third season. He was mostly shown through like images,
or like he was just like in the shadows, right? Of like
all you heard was Mark Hamill's sweet voice.
Yeah, that's how you got to see the Fire Lord. They built him up.
Yeah.
To have a presence, and when they finally showed him, it's like okay, that all right, that makes sense. Here I'm pretty sure we get scenes of what what is Fire Lord Ozai, and that's always one of those interesting things.
Yeah.
Of like, how like if you're not gonna do like this sort of dark buildup of this guy in the background, who's essentially our final boss.
Yeah.
It's like you're clearly wanting to do more with him, and what exactly is that going to lead to?
Yeah. Even Azula, who didn't show up until like the end of season. No, she okay. To those who are gonna probably be yelling at us, she does show up at early in the first season in the episode of the storm, because she's like a background character. But everyone's like, oh, well, she looked kind of bad though. Like she looks kind of like way too well designed to be just like a background character.
Well, yeah, I mean it's Zuko's sister, right?
Yeah, and we know who she is by the end of the first season, because Zuko talks about her, we're introduced to her, and then season 2 she fucking blows up, and then season 3 is like, what the fuck? She went cuckoo bananas.
Yeah, that's sort of her, like, she basically is charged with the same task as Zuko, except,
she's scary.
yeah, Ozai's like, nah, you better beat your brother at this.
I fucking hate your brother.
Yeah, he's a disappointment.
He's a little bitch.
You're the good child.
You're the prodigy.
Yeah, so there is that sort of sense, and it's very clear that we do see a shot of her here.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's one of those things of like, all right, we're introducing her a bit earlier than usual. Where does that lead?
Because it's not like the way the animated show was, where she's kind of like a well-designed character despite being a background character at first, because that's how she kind of was presented to us, right? But like, no, it seems like we're building her up. We're not. Doesn't look like we're having those Fire Lord be like this shadowy figure. And this is what I'm saying about the sort of how the live action One Piece did it. If you guys watched the show, that episode, you guys probably know what I'm talking about, because in the show they introduce a lot of elements that don't really show up till like way later in the manga or in the anime. Like the introduction of Garp, Luffy's grandfather, the introduction of, well, the implication of hockey, kind of shit. And if I had lost you, I'm sorry, that's One Piece for you. But it's that kind of stuff where even the conversation of like other stuff that like I know that because I read the manga, or whatever. It's being written with hindsight, right? Because Fire Lord Ozai isn't much of a character. He is just kind of evil.
I mean, that's why I sort of mentioned him as a final boss kind of thing.
Yeah.
He is essentially he's the end goal, right? Like,
yeah.
He doesn't really have a whole lot of motivations other than that I just want to rule the world kind of thing, right? Like, all the other characters have a bit of nuance to them in terms of the villains, right? But it's very been clear from the get-go that Fire Lord Ozai is just a bad guy.
Yeah, and so my hope with the show is that they kind of flesh him out more, because later on, if you know the story of Fire Lord Ozai, not just from the show but also from the books, which I have read, he is still very just evil. No nuance, just evil. Now, granted, I'm not saying a villain should have some nuance. It's okay if they're just evil for evil's sake. But considering how the writing is for like Avatar, it kind of feels like Ozai should have some level of like nuance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, because like even in the comics, he just becomes like sort of this, like, just the villain, just villain, evil, ill kind of stuff. I mean, Azula's always been felt more like like the true antagonist, I guess.
Well, she has a lot more interesting things about her that make her an antagonist. Obviously, she is way more like
proactive.
Yeah, I guess proactive. But I was gonna say more crueler.
Yeah.
Than Zuko, in a lot of ways, she's just very like, while Zuko, I think, grows as a person and learns to understand his mistakes and stuff, Azula is very much ingrained with like, the Fire Nation society and being seen as a prodigy and like, not knowing failure and stuff, and like, she just, she like obviously loses her mind a bit because she's like, how, everything's been gifted to me and then it's all falling apart. I don't understand. This is impossible, right? Like he's always had that sort of character, of like crisis of her, of like just sort of like, how is it, such and such is happening to me, this could never happen to me, I'm like, I'm a prodigy, I'm the best, that sort of thing, right?
It's also the question of whether or not her mother loved her. Because that was always like, I remember that was one of the key things about her mental breakdown, was her talking to the ghost of her mother.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you never loved me. I was like, no, I did love you. But it's also like her being like, that's what she would say, but she hates me, kind of stuff. So like, she was always more the interesting villain. So the question now, I mean, for the show, like, now they have this opportunity, will you like explore these characters more or keep them the way they are? If so, then kind of what is the point of this?
Well, to be fair, we could say something similar of the Last Airbender movie, because that movie also shows Fire Lord Ozai,
Mhm.
you know, pretty early on, and
Mhm.
I mean they don't really do much with him. He's just sort of there. I mean, granted, if the movies had continued, which I doubt,
Mhm.
but if they had, who knows what M Night would have done with the Fire Lord? I mean, obviously Azula shows up at an in credit scene to set up a sequel, right?
Yeah.
Because it's very similar to her role in the show, right? Like, hey, I'm tasking you to find the Avatar. You're the only one that can do the job. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, that's sort of the interesting thing. I guess when it comes down to it, just two notable characters that we know from later on in the seasons are apparently being set up more earlier than they were in the original. How will that affect pacing of the plot? All that sort of thing, right?
Mhm.
And I do sort of find it interesting because because when you're talking about some of the aspects that they added to the One Piece live action anime that don't show up until later on,
Yeah.
is that it's sort of like it's kind of one of those interesting things of when you're adapting a long running series or like just any sort of series where they kind of just wrote it as they went along.
Yeah.
Not saying like they had they were just like half-assing it, right?
No. It's one of those things where like the sometimes it's not developed till way later.
It's more it's one of those things of like I like to think back to it's not like how what happened in Dragon Ball Z during the Cell
Yeah.
saga
Yeah.
where it became very apparent that like things were kind of changing every so often because Toriyama's editor wasn't just liking how Toriyama was taking the story, that sort of thing. Um, in this case, it's like, all right, we know this stuff will be important later, and rather than just trying to like talk about it when it shows up, let's try to at least add bits of foreshadowing and like hints at some of these things happening later on as to make it seem not as weird or
Mhm.
out of place or out of nowhere that stuff like this is starting to happen now.
Mhm.
Which I hope is not really what they do with Azula and Fire Lord Ozai, where it's like, oh, why don't we ever see the Fire Lord? Why is he just a shadowy figure? Well, he's here. That's about it, right? That's what
Mhm.
he looks like. Okay. Are we gonna get anything else with him? No. But now your question has been answered, audience. But I didn't. Well, I mean, okay. I wasn't really expecting my question to be answered. And it's like, oh, who's this character back here? That's Azula, Zuko's sister, and
Yeah.
here's her whole
You know
spiel.
what it might be? The most we're gonna get them is in that flashback episode of the storm where we find out about how Zuko got his scar.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna be more of an extended version of that episode to make it, more dramatic and like make it more sense kind of thing. Because like I said, Azula is just kind of like a well-designed background character in that episode. But we know it's Azula because like we know now. But like at the time, it was like, damn, that character right there next to Iroh and Shao, she's way too well designed to be just a background character.
Right.
And she's gonna happy. She's like, yeah, kick his ass, kind of shit. Kick his ass, dad. So like, yeah, no. Now we'll have context of who that character is, and probably more context and with the dad. Probably not, but like that's at most what I feel like we didn't need to do for that. And yeah, but I think the one thing we can say about the show that looks like it's got well, and like you said yourself, the aesthetics, the look, they got everything down right. We even get into the Kyoshi Warriors, which we never got in the movie.
To be fair, I think there were in like a deleted scene for a little bit,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, the Kyoshi Warriors stuff is always, I think that's probably one of my favorite parts of the original show. Um, I mean, heck, you're even getting what is her name, Jade the Bounty Hunter.
Oh yeah. We're going that far back.
I guess that's sort of the interesting thing that I'm thinking about is because with I know that the One Piece anime was like what 8 episodes, right?
It was 8 episodes.
And it covered a fair chunk of different arcs all in the go, right?
Yeah.
I do kind of wonder how exactly are they gonna be formatting the Avatar show, right?
Yeah. How are
Because
they gonna do that?
I feel like the thing is that there's a lot of episodic moments in Avatar, right?
Mhm.
Like, obviously it has its grand narrative, right? That it's sort of developing, right? But there are also various moments where they just go out of the way of things. You know, there's the episode where they go to that island with the sea serpent thing. You know, that's sort of messing around, right? Remember that?
That was a Kyoshi Warrior episode.
Was that the entire Kyoshi Warrior?
Yes. Where they just kind of like ride it, or which, or are you talking about the one that's supposed to be the bridge to get to the Earth, the Ba Sing Se?
I'm probably thinking of the second one, honestly.
Okay,
But my point is,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that there's a lot of episodic stuff that happens, stuff that
that
doesn't really
yeah.
matter in the grand scheme of things, right? Like, it adds good character development stuff, but it's not like an integral part
Yeah,
of
like
the story.
you can cut that out. Like the episode of the two warring tribes.
Yeah,
That one that one was so boring.
I mean, we know that stuff, like, because I mean, there's important stuff, right? Like, say, heck, that whole storyline with Jet
Mhm.
and his band of rebels is gonna be part of the show.
It will be 8 episodes.
Okay then,
But continue.
because it's like at least 20 something odd episodes, right?
Mhm.
It's gonna be interesting to see how exactly they sort of lay everything out, right?
Yeah, and they're also implying the spirits episode. You know, the one where he goes into the spirit realm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it looks like, because I'm reading through the episodes and I'm like, oh, that's a lot. That's a lot to cover in such a short amount of time in episodes. So that's one thing. I mean,
And I mean, to be fair, the episodes are probably gonna be at least an hour long, right?
yeah.
And the original length of most of the Avatar episodes were released like maybe 20 minutes.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's not impossible to get all that stuff down, but it's more of like, it is going to be one of those, like, I wonder how pacing is going to be handled here, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's very clear we're going to be covering all of book one in these 8 episodes. It'll probably be paced, because I feel like that's probably one of the interesting things about, say, the last Airbender movie, was that for, for as bad as it was, it covered the first book all right.
No, yeah, you're right. There's parts of it I wish they would include, like Omi and the Kyoshi Warrior, Suki, the spirit stuff, Roku. Roku wasn't even in that movie.
No, you had a talking dragon though that was kind of looked like Roku's dragon, so it's kind of one of those weird things. I don't know. It's gonna be one of the
Yeah.
It condensed the story enough to fit a movie length, but you always felt like you could have maybe gone more for certain things, like, because there were in with the show though, like, there's probably less incentive to do that, but at the same time I'm sort of wondering, like, okay, but what will they cut out?
That might be one of the reasons why there was creative differences.
Well, I mean, obviously, but yeah, it's gonna be one of those interesting sort of like new like we're gonna see how exactly they handle certain storylines and various things, and we're gonna have to be like, okay, but like, did it pay off as well as you think it did? Did it not? That's gonna be a whole smorgasbord of interesting takes coming out in the next couple of weeks.
No, I agree. And we will be covering that too. Probably more myself than you, because between the two of us, I am the binge watcher.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, I think I've always like, don't get me wrong, I like Avatar. I liked The Last Airbender. Legend of Korra was all right. It was whatever.
I mean, to be fair, Nickelodeon kind of screwed the pooch on Korra.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely remember how they really sort of botched all of like Korra.
Yeah, they did.
I'm pretty sure, what was it? The last episode was only available on their website.
Oh yeah, the last few episodes of book 3 was only available through online because it got way too violent for audiences. You remember, it was only supposed to be one series, one book, and that was it. and then like, hold up now, that first episode did pretty good. More, but we only wrote nope more. Oh damn it.
Yeah.
But like I said, I mean, the thing about Korra though, like I said, it's surprisingly much more mature series than like most people will give it credit for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the execution was the problem with that show. But no, yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic about this. I want to see do good because I am a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender. That show hit a lot of people in their childhood, man. I remember being a kid and being like, man, I kind of want to be an earthbender, or I kind of want to be a firebender, you know?
Yeah, it was very, it's kind of one of those things of like, how the hell did Nickelodeon not make more of this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how is it that Legend of Korra got botched so badly by Nickelodeon? And how is it that only now does Nickelodeon realize, oh shit, Legend of Avatar, this is stuff we can work with.
Yeah.
Let's have a whole Avatar Studios thing. Let's like get some of this stuff rolling,
like yeah. And I know a lot of like all our Asian friends. If you guys remember Kelvin, if you guys have been here that long, that was one of his favorite shows because of the representation. Like that show did a lot of stuff that like paved the way for a lot of things. Even Korra was a very good show when it came to the LGBT community.
Yeah, I mean, heck, Korra was, like they ended the show with her getting together with what's her name,
Asami.
Like that's.
They don't show the kiss, but you know what happened.
Yeah, and if Nickelodeon decided to put that on TV, they could have gotten some brownie points. I'm just saying.
Oh, they got a lot of brownie points.
They would have, but
we gotta make way for SpongeBob, bro.
Yeah, classic, Nickelodeon.
Classic television.
But yeah, it is kind of interesting to see, like, just like only now, years after, both shows have ended, that like it's like become apparent, like, oh yeah, no, these shows were, liked by a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
They have a fan base. Why don't we make stuff with it?
Yeah, and like I said, it's had a very important impact. Not only in like,
I mean, like, I feel like so many shows that come out nowadays sort of definitely have that sort of Avatar flair to them, right?
Yeah, they try to go with that. It's one of the things that kind of attracted me towards like the Voltron Legendary Defender show, because it gave me that sort of Avatar vibe. Same thing with like the She-Ra cartoon that came out on Netflix. Well, I granted some of that stuff did not pan out so well. Look at Voltron, specifically. It still had that, it still, very much held that importance of, trying to tell a long format story in a cartoon coming from from the West.
Yeah, like, I think there's a very notable trend when it comes to certain Western animated shows of like, there's not a whole lot of action oriented sort of thing, right?
Not a lot of action, not a lot of story driven stuff.
Yeah, and Avatar was sort of like the big one, right? Like it really focuses on that stuff. I mean, we have like other stuff in the past like that sort of have like that action seg down, like Samurai Jack. Like the story isn't really, it's very loose, right?
Yeah.
It's just
because it works. I mean,
but it works.
Yeah.
Right. But point is, like, Avatar and Korra both have that sort of spectacle to it, right? Or not spectacle, but like they have that sort of balance of action and like a long form story. Like they truly are like the closest thing I think American animation has come to like being anime, and some people will just argue that no, it is anime, right?
And that's a conversation for another time. No, but no, it's without a doubt that Avatar has a very special place with a lot of people's heart. It was a very imaginative series, a very beautiful world, a world that a lot of people kind of had a lot of fixation with, and it really changed a lot of people's idea of animation, especially long format stories. You can see that in like any of the stuff that came out after Avatar. And hopefully, the show does something really cool. I don't think it's gonna have that kind of staying power as the cartoon, but if it helps remind people, if it helps people go check out the cartoon and realize how cool this show was, back in the day, I'm all for it. And I think that's a good place to end the episode. If you guys enjoyed what you heard, be sure to follow us on all social medias, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We're most of it on Instagram. We're in there. You'll find a link to all podcast sites. We're officially part of like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, all of the like, and a link to the YouTube for your audio listeners out there who want to put a face to the voice. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we do have a page on for any form of support. And hopefully Avatar comes out well. That's all I want to say. And yeah, that's been your boy Eli.
Me,
You guys have a good one. Peace.